Good Monday evening to you on this 24th of August 2020 as we are dealing with Tropical Storm Laura as it exits the westernmost province of Cuba, Pinar del Rio. And we are now seeing the center of circulation move over warm water, and we are going to talk about what we can expect overnight and where the storm is expected to go in the next couple of days. Remember to make all decisions solely based upon official forecast products from the National Hurricane Center, your local emergency management jurisdictions, or your local National Weather Service forecast offices. So we have Tropical Storm Laura. Well, before I get into that, Tropical Storm Marco did make landfall. You can see what's left of Marco, which is not much, is currently up here. You can see the lower level spin in the center of circulation actually kind of drifting off. It made an official landfall around 6 p.m. Central Daylight Time around the mouth of the Mississippi River, this little peninsula, this little appendage of Louisiana. And the rest of Marco decoupled and is pushed off to the northeast here due to that stronger shear. So really not much of a rainmaker or anything for the area, bringing some rain to the area in south central Louisiana and coastal Mississippi and coastal Alabama, but not really as formidable of a storm that was feared initially, which is certainly good news. But now attention turns to Laura, which we have here. All this associated with the tropical storm, the center of circulation just now coming off of Cuba. You can make it out a little bit in the spin right here if you see. Just coming over the westernmost province of Cuba, and now over the in the Gulf of Mexico over open waters, and now becomes a critical point in the forecast where, how does Laura intensify? How quickly does the core wrap up? Is it a tight core? Is it a broad core system? All of these things go into determining how quickly it's going to intensify. There is nothing in its way to inhibit intensity except a little pool of cool ocean heat content, which I'll discuss in just a moment. But overall a dangerous situation, and the potential and the ceiling is high for the storm, which is never something you want to be, dealing with the peak, entering the peak of tropical season. You don't want to be dealing with that, but here we are with an active hurricane season. We have Tropical Storm Laura with a high ceiling and the potential to be a strong hurricane at landfall. This is a neat website I found from Dr. Brian Norcross, from the hurricane specialist that worked at the Weather Channel for a long time. This is just a nice, graphic summary of what is going on. We have winds of 65 miles per hour, it's booking it west-northwest at 20 miles per hour. That's very quick for a tropical system. Part of why the land interaction has not been a huge deal is because it is moving along at a rather quick clip. And the pressure is now sub 1,000 millibars down to 998, which is, sign of a slightly more intense cyclone than was earlier today. And the Air Force and hurricane hunters are currently investigating as of the 8 o'clock advisory. We'll have a little bit more information tonight from the drop-sons they have, and we'll see what Laura is doing. In terms of alerts, we have storm surge watches up from San Luis Pass, Texas to Ocean Springs, Mississippi, Lake Pontchartrain, Port Boulevard, Texas to West of Morgan City, Louisiana, the hurricane watch, and then tropical storm warning and tropical storm watch listed as you can see there. This just takes the points of the cone of uncertainty forecast from the National Hurricane Center, the official forecast, and just plots it out in terms of points. So tropical storm category 1 hurricane by 2 a.m. Wednesday, category 2 hurricane, and gives the wind speed. This information is kind of hidden inside the advisories, but this is just a nice way to bring it out and show overlaid with the map here of the cone of uncertainty. And this is an interesting note that he did put on here. Average intensity errors for tropical cyclones are plus or minus 1 category. Prepare for at least 1 category higher than forecast. That's the first time I've explicitly seen that written, which is interesting. I know hurricane intensities fluctuate greatly, and forecasting hurricane and tropical cyclone intensity is very challenging, as we've seen in the past few years. But that's an interesting little tidbit that I had not really heard of before. So again, if they're forecasting a category 2 hurricane, prepare for a major hurricane landfall anywhere from Houston, Beaumont, Port Arthur, Texas, Lake Charles, Louisiana really needs to be preparing at this current time, and then the central coast of Louisiana. New Orleans is a little bit to the east of the, what is expected to be the center of the path right now, but certainly still needs to be preparing, because anywhere within, anywhere really from Corpus Christi, Texas to New Orleans, Louisiana is still in the scope of this system, and we'll have to check out what Laura is doing tomorrow. So again, enlarging that hurricane forecast cone we see here, currently the fix is a little bit off. It's right about here, I'll say, little bit to the right of the adjusted cone as it's coming off of Cuba, and then it's going to continue have, greater than, here is a 24-hour period. So it's going to have more than 24 hours, closer to about 48 hours over the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico, which are very warm. We'll look at that in a second. But there is a pool of cooler water a little bit deeper right here that may at least slow or keep the intensity at bay. We'll have to see. Laura's kind of had a mind of its own as it interacted with land, so we'll have to see what the storm decides to do. But we will see that there is, that's the only real limiting factor I can find. The land interaction is going to be over with, and now is, because it is over water. There's very calm shear, there's little to no shear, which is going to help the storm, do what it wants to do. And then the ocean heat content is there in the western half of the Gulf of Mexico, but there is a cooler pool here that may at least keep the intensity at bay, so we'll have to look at that. So as I'm talking about that, I'll open that up. And this is from the Cooperative Institute of Meteorological Satellite Studies from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And we have sea surface temperature. This is half of the story. We have the current fix right here off of the westernmost province of Cuba, Pinar del Rio. And we have, the storm in some of the warmest water it's encountered so far, some really warm water that it was encountering as it tracks south of Cuba. But again, now it's in the Gulf of Mexico, some deeper water. And there's this very large pool of sea surface temperature. So you look at this and think, well, good gracious, it's unimpeded. It's going to grow into a very strong hurricane. It's only half the story, though. We need to look, this is the sea surface temperature. We need to look deeper as well. So we look at something called ocean heat content. And the warmer colors here indicate more favorable conditions and deeper warm water. So yes, the hurricane the tropical cyclone needs warm water, but it needs deep warm water to keep, feeding it, basically, for lack of a better word. The hurricane is a heat engine. It's going to pull up, warm water, and if it's a slow-moving storm, it's going to really be churning up that water, and it needs a deep source of warm water to continue to intensify and reach its maximum potential, which is what the storm, of course, wants to do. It's what we do not want it to do. And this is interesting because Hurricane Marco, as it was sitting here in the Gulf of Mexico the other day, left this little cold wake in the cold pool here. We'll have to see how that impacts Laura and if it even really cares, because right now, like we were saying, it did not seem to care much about the very high mountains of Hispaniola and southeastern Cuba, and even on this Cuban peninsula here. It did not seem to care too much about the terrain. It actually seemed to work the terrain a little bit to intensify it. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Again, in the Western Gulf, pretty warm water and pretty favorable in terms of, intensifying hurricane conditions. And so we'll have to keep an eye on that. You can see the forecast cone overlaid here, having a Category 2 hurricane at landfall. Houston being right here, Port Arthur and Beaumont being here, Lake Charles being kind of right in the center of the forecast cone at this point in time. Jumping over to radar, this is the last thing I wanted to show in this quick update. This is out of Key West, Florida, the radar out of Key West, and you can see the center of Tropical Storm Laura now offshore, off of Cuba, and kind of right on track. This is, the general area of circulation in here, trying to form a kind of an eye wall structure. The center of these storms are very delicate, so if the inner core of the system is very tight and very concentrated, the system kind of puts up a wall, an eye wall, and protects the center of the storm, and that's going to help it intensify much more quickly. If it is a broader circulation, which that is what it looks like it's trying to do right now. If the circulation was broader, by several hundred or several tens of more miles, it's going to have a hard time consolidating that and really strengthening. So right now it does look like Laura is maximizing the very short time it's been over water so far and trying to get its act together, which is certainly something we don't want to see, but unfortunately, it is unimpeded as it is in the Gulf of Mexico, and we'll have to see how it handles that. But going back to the satellite as I wrap up this video, just wanted to give a quick update. There'll be a lot more to talk about at this time tomorrow when Tropical Storm Laura has had 24 hours over the Gulf of Mexico. We'll have to see how it is handling the warm water and how it's intaking. I'm seeing a couple of little bursts here that I want to zoom in on. So if I stop the animation here, you can see there's the center of circulation now offshore right in this general area. I know that's hard to see with the red overlaid, but I draw your attention to that. Notice these little bursts of convection right here. If we get a burst of convection that wraps all the way around the center of circulation, this thing is going to explode. That's just the way that the meteorology works, because it's going to have a protection of the center of the circulation. The storm looks vertically stacked now, and it's going to have no problem intensifying. So that's something we don't want to see. But we'll have to watch overnight if those kind of hot towers, as we call them, or deep convection, like down here south of Cuba, is really ripping and roaring. Some very heavy rain coming on shore now of this peninsula of Cuba. But we'll have to see how this wraps around the center of the storm and if that impacts the intensity. And in the short term, and then of course long-term intensity, we are expecting it to reach Category 2 hurricane status before making landfall somewhere near the Texas-Louisiana border. Somewhere between the, anywhere from Houston to Lake Charles is in play here at the moment, and anywhere from Corpus Christi, Texas, down to New Orleans needs to be on alert because you're still in the scope of the storm. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. So just in review, Tropical Storm Laura is a formidable tropical storm currently with 65 mile/hour sustained winds with pressure down to 998 millibars. Hurricane hunters are currently in the storm performing reconnaissance, and we will have to see what is the status of the storm as of the latest update. Recording this video at 9:52 p.m. Eastern, so the advisories have been out for about 2 hours. We'll get a next advisory at 11 p.m. and we'll see what the hurricane hunters have found and if they make any adjustments to the forecast. But we'll be able to tell a lot more, and there'll be a lot more to talk about in 24 hours when we see how Laura interacts with the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico and the low shear environment. And we'll have to see what the storm decides to do and how the storm is faring, and that will we'll make forecast adjustments accordingly. In North Carolina, where I am based, impact should be very limited to just some weekend showers and storms that may be sparked by the remnants of Laura. But when you have storms making landfall west of the Mississippi River, a lot of the moisture is wringed out by the time that it gets to the Carolinas. So that is something that we are not expecting big impacts here in North Carolina, but we will have to keep an eye on just in case. So that does it for this video. Thanks for watching. Feel free to share. Feel free to comment on this video or comment on my Facebook page, Andrews Weather Center, or shoot me a Facebook message or anything to get in contact if you have any questions or comments or concerns. And I will see you in another video tomorrow night as we discuss what is likely to be Hurricane Laura at this time tomorrow. So thanks for watching. Stay safe.